thinking about, there's a few different ways, a few different indicators I want to go through. And some I've talked about before, at least one I haven't. And I think it's a pretty important one too. Maybe I've alluded to it, but I haven't really did it in a formal discussion like this before. So first of all, I want to say none of these require any special skills or exclusive access. You don't need to be in a paid group. You don't need to all this public information. There's no secrets. And it reminds me you have some of these extreme money maximalist people who are, in the community, they're not or whatever. And then they don't want to share information. I don't know. Just the transparency thing is a little annoying to me sometimes. I'm like, it'll be on the stream. Oh, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. Don't give the people that. I'm like, man, I want to help the community here. I don't need to have all these secrets. So these are things I want to share with you all. I would say the three big things, and anyone can look at this. Anyone can do this. Again, don't need special skills. Maybe you need a little bit of tech skills for some of them. But first of all, I'll start with the basics, the hex price. So perhaps people in the last few days have been voting with their money. There's one theory for you. We were at 12, 13 cents on May at launch. And then now, yesterday at least, I think we're up a little bit now, but we went around 7 or 8 cents. So to me, my first thought was, well, people don't think PulseChain is that close because it makes no sense to sell right before the fork. If anyone in this community knows anything, they think that all the coins are going to have a value once the PulseChain fork happens. It is hex, so you're going to want that PX copy. So that's one thing. So looking at the hex price, for example, if you see it go lower, to me that says unless there's just going to be some crazy, 4-hour run up before launch and then just literally get the greenest candle you've ever seen in your life, I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'll be gradual again. Not financial advice, just my personal opinion. So that's something you want to look for. So hex price. Second thing is LP. So that kind of ties into LP positions as well. It would make sense for the LP to be pulled because as far as I know, your Uniswap LP position, which is kind of like a special NFT, isn't getting copied over PulseChain. Now, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's the case. A lot of people have been talking for a while that LP is likely to be pulled. Hex price volatility is going to be crazy at that time because people are going to want their PX copies. They're going to want those liquid or staked, of course. We know those get copied over. So recently, I wrote a tool. I wrote some code, as a dev might do, and you can run locally, and I can share the link and stuff as well. I have it on my GitHub. But if you know how to use Python, know how to use command line, it basically, you can use it to get the number of hex in the liquidity pool and Hedron. It supports hex and Hedron. You can get, it just goes through a few different pools, mostly the biggest pools, and it'll tell you how much USD liquidity is there. And then you can also track it. You can say, okay, over some time period, if it goes, after 4 hours, 8 hours, whatever it is, if you notice a 10% change, 20% change, some big swing, that could be a sign of liquidity changing. Maybe it's getting pulled. It just, okay, I need to go investigate. I detect something may be happening. So that's another way, an indicator that something around launch may be happening. You may see liquidity move around. And then the third one is the one I haven't really talked about much, which is the certificate transparency reports. So big words, nobody knows what I'm talking about. It reminded me around the testnet launch, we saw some people talking about DNS, some different domains coming online. And that reminded me, oh wow, that would be an easy thing to write or easy thing to check. Would be like if we could look at the different certificates being published, because all this public information, you can look at the transparency reports. You can look at certificates for different domains being published when people register them or create certificates, all that. You can see the domains that exist. You can use different information to put together. There's different services offer this. There's different code that you can use to track this stuff. And for example, if you see one day you see mainnet.pulsechain.com get registered or a certificate created, hey, indicator, right? So there's ways to do this. You can Google and find out different services that can help you, or code. If you're a coder, you can write this stuff yourself to look at it. There's different frameworks, but that is another sign that you could use to say, okay, if something interesting looks registered and it's not testnet, or maybe it's something in testnet you just want more information about, RH or otherwise hasn't talked about. That's one way you can get more information. Again, all public information. It's all fair game. So those are the big three, I would say. And the fourth one, I don't think is being very utilized right now that I tweeted about, I think a few weeks ago. If you are not subscribed to PulseChain GitLab updates, you're missing out. So I just about every day I see in my inbox, I see updates for code or merge requests or documentation updates or something going on. So the devs are working on stuff, and I'll just drop this link. I'll put it in the private chat because I imagine I'm not a mod in this channel yet, but I'll drop it here so you can post it. And that is I went through exactly how to subscribe to GitLab updates. So when they make changes in the repos that are public, now they may make private changes and you can't see those or know much information, but the public updates you can see and you can track those. And if you know what's going on, or you can try to read into them if you want, but that's another way to get information to try to put some of the pieces together. So those are 4 different ways. Everything else is just guessing, speculation. Even what RH says, you go back, he's been saying launch is closed for 2 years now. So if he says this is your last shot, again, I don't take everything he says with definite certainty. But those are 4 things I think that you can use as indicators to try to put some of the pieces together. And if you're doing them and other people aren't, maybe you can give yourself a leg up. All public information.
That is such a great way of thinking about this. I'm so glad you put this in tangible terms, because everyone's grasping for straws, trying to read the tea leaves and read into what each and every tweet means and the frequency of tweets and all this stuff. But these are very, very tangible updates, specifically the GitLab. Now, as I'm kind of hearing you say all these things, I think one of the things I think we're all asking ourselves is, okay, we're kind of periodically all getting these kind of series of updates to the GitLab, to these tweets, all these things. But how do we know which one of these updates is the one that kind of really signals we're getting close here? Now, I have a tweet from Hexologist I want to bring up here in a second. But one thing I want to bring up before we get there is your point about the liquidity providers. That's a very, very interesting thing to kind of dwell on, because liquidity providers are presumably, we can argue the point here, smart money, whales, people who have a large financial interest in getting this right. And we're not just saying, their behavior is 100% guaranteed to be the most optimal way of playing this, but they have financial incentive to attempt to try and time things somewhat right. And you're right that perhaps, when they do start to withdraw from their LPs, that might be the sign that, hey, we're getting close. And what I'm thinking is, as we get all these updates in the GitLab and all those kinds of things, whatever one of these updates triggers the liquidity pool, that's probably the update that kind of matters in terms of us getting closer. Do you understand what I'm trying to get at here? And would you agree with that?
Well, that's why I wrote some of the code to track it too, because it's I think when we see people pulling massive amounts of liquidity, and even there's the I think Hex Whale, the whale bot, it's even said before about liquidity being pulled. And had I known better before, I may have thought, oh wow, maybe something about to happen. Although I knew testnet was coming and stuff like that, so it probably wouldn't be a mainnet suggestion. But you can see it, you can get alerts from that too. But yeah, that's if you want to get your copy. As far as I know, if you are holding liquidity, you're not going to get a copy of that you can use on PulseX, for example, because there's not going to be any Uniswap on PulseChain, as far as I know. So yeah, that would be they would want to pull liquidity, have it liquid or staked, whatever, get their copy, and then put it back afterwards and do whatever they want, bridge it over. So I think liquidity is a big sign. But how do you track that? Again, it's like I wrote some code to do it. You can use Hex, the whale bot that says all the extreme transactions that are happening, the buying and selling, and it's talked about liquidity before. Or you just listen to TA people or people on stream that want to talk about these things going on. But to me, yeah, that is one indicator that something big is about to happen, especially since we're in testnet v3. Richard says it's the final one. This is not going to testnet v4. It doesn't look like. So if mainnet's next and you see liquidity being pulled, looks like a sign to me. If it's like really drying up and then you got other people looking at it and you see all the tweets, oh, look at all the stuff, like from trusted people, right? That would be a sign for me.
Absolutely.